Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today finally we can get back into a little bit of model making. So just recently, last week, we actually had some sunny days here in Christchurch, and actually one day got up to 20 degrees, which is pretty good for this time of the year. So I was able to get into the garage and be able to do some clear coat spraying in the warmer temperatures. So today's video is part one of a two-part series which is looking into kit bashing a Scalescenes downloadable building kit. Now I have worked on one of these types of kits before, and that was the Northlight engine shed, and there's a link in the top corner for that. And although the end result was absolutely fantastic and I was very happy with it, it's a very long-winded and quite tricky process to actually build these types of kits. So I think the first thing I'll look at is the location of where I need the final building to go, which is on the upper level town scene. So it's just tucked away in a corner, and I'll just jump over to that and we'll take a look and see where this building's going to go. So the area in question is this little area in here, and originally I was thinking of kind of working with this leftover bit of building which was from the low relief building sitting just here, and I was going to sort of kit bash this in some fashion to slot into that spot there, but in the end I just sort of thought that it really wasn't going to work. So I needed a shape for the building that was quite unusual, so this is just a paper template of the base of the building, which theoretically is going to sit in there. And I'll just move the station out of the way so that it's not blocking the view. And that is the base foundation of the building, so that's sort of roughly how it's going to fit in there. And I think it's actually going to go that way, so it's going to be on a slight angle with the street, and that's the theory behind that. So the building in question that I've actually found on the Scalescenes website that I think might be quite suitable for this area is a corner shop, which is T022C, and although it's only a two-story building, the idea is that I'd like to kit bash this into a four-story building. Now some of the other tricky aspects to this is the peculiar angle of the location, the footprint of the building that I have on the layout, and being able to manipulate this kit to fit into that location. So the first thing we'll look at is actually the modifications that I've done, and this I manipulated on the computer using Illustrator. So we'll jump over to that and just sort of explain roughly sort of what I got up to on the computer. So the way I manipulate the downloadable files from Scalescenes is I use Illustrator. Now I'm pretty sure you could use Inkscape as well, which is actually a free vector-based design software, and you can actually open the PDF and select the page you want and open it up, and then once it's in there you can actually ungroup and remove clipping masks and things like that, and actually start tinkering with the design itself, so you know things can be moved around. So I haven't used Inkscape to do this kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure you'd be able to do that using Inkscape. So the main process of doing this for this particular build is the fact that I'm going to kit bash it into a few extra floors So it's not a 2-story building, it's going to become a 4-story building on that corner. So these sections here are the 2 side walls, and this is where I'm extending the artwork and creating some extra floors, and the outcome essentially is this over here. So the other thing too that I've had to adapt is that the walls are actually sort of cut off, so that's the wall that meets up against the back scene, and this is the wall that sort of returns to where the end of the factory is, and this is the wall that faces out onto the end of the station building. So essentially really I've taken these walls here and that becomes this extended section, and this is the corner piece for the wall, and that now actually extends up, and of course I've added some window openings in those 2 areas there. So that's essentially the process that I've used in here. It's a little bit complex. There's probably not much point in delving into this via Illustrator because not everyone's got Illustrator, but I'm sure you'd be able to achieve similar results using Inkscape. Of course, the other method too would be to simply do this by hand and print these walls out, splice along the brick lines and physically actually reproduce it and cut and paste them in on top of each other to create essentially the same effect. So once I had all these set up, it was a case of printing out this section, which is all the vertical walls, and then it was also sort of a case of just working out the width of this wall here. For example, this wall here is this wall here, and that's the corner piece, which is this piece here, and this wall is the main wall running across, and then that is the back wall, which is that wall there, and then this is the actual back scene running along here, so it doesn't need a back wall. So for example, this section here is actually not needed at all. So that's showing the outline with the roof section poking out above the top. So also from these PDF pages that you get from Scalescenes, of course there is the pages that you print and stick onto heavy card and hand cut out the shapes. So of course I've gone one step further and actually taken those sections which needed modifying as well. So now we have our 4 stories and so forth, and that has all been laser cut onto heavy card. So that is the 2mm card, and then we have the medium or 1mm card, which is for some of the shop front fascias, window sills and other little bits and pieces like that. And that of course is also laser cut as well. So that's roughly how I went about manipulating this kit on the computer, and then the next step, which needed the warmer weather and the warmer temperatures in the garage, was once I'd actually printed out all the material, and this included the modified prints as well, I pinned all of that material up onto a cardboard box and went over the entire lot with a matte varnish spray. Now the benefit of doing this is that when you're actually working with the prints and wrapping them around bits of card and so forth, that the print is more durable and it's less likely to scratch or be worn on the corners where the print is wrapped around the card. So with the printing complete and the matte clear coat spray sprayed over the top of the prints and the laser cut card components ready to go, it was a case of getting into the assembly process. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the windows prepared before we get on to laying brick print onto the card base layers, and this is simply produced on a Cricut Joy, and I find this is absolutely fantastic way of creating windows, and it just simply cuts it out on a self-adhesive vinyl, very similar to obviously in the sign writing industry. and then applying that to just a piece of clear acetate or something. I just ripped this off some old packaging. So I'll just sort of quickly go through this. A little bit of a process in here. You have to pull out all the excess vinyl, which in the signwriting industry is called weeding. And then we've got a transfer tape that we apply over the top, and then we lay it down on our clear film and trim out the windows once it's all done. So we'll just whiz through the weeding process, which I will skip or speed through because it does take a little bit of care and attention getting these out. Now, the colour I've chosen is sort of a beige colour. Often I use white vinyl, but I thought in this situation it might look quite good with this beige colour. There is quite a number of vinyl colours available that are specifically designed for the Cricut machines, but I have the small Cricut Joy, and there is actually a limited number of colours that are available for that machine, although you can actually, from what I understand, stick any vinyl in the machine, but you have to use the cutting mat that's provided, and I find that a bit of a faff, and use the vinyl material that doesn't need a cutting mat. So it's just a case of going through and pulling out all the bits in the middle and around the outside. Now these windows, of course, are taken directly from the Scalescenes PDF file, which I think are intended as if you print them, but it's easy enough to extract out the elements for these windows and send them through the vinyl cutter. Now, I used to work in the signwriting industry many years ago, and sort of adapt a few sort of techniques for doing this type of thing. And so I just peel back a small section of this application tape or transfer tape and lie it down on top. And then, of course, we're using the squeegee. Now, this is another signwriter's go-to tool for applying vinyl lettering, and then it's just a case of peeling it back as you go and pushing it along, not applying too much pressure obviously, because you don't really want to stretch the application tape in any way, and give it a good press down. Now this is a little bit more tricky than your standard old vinyl cut lettering, because the backing on this vinyl is actually quite a rigid sort of plastic sheet, so it can be a bit tricky peeling this off sometimes. So we'll just trim out some excess of this. Now, this is unfortunately where this can actually be quite tricky, getting the backing film off this. Unfortunately. So I'll probably skip this part and come back to you once I've got this backing film off, which is very tricky indeed. Right, so that's got the backing film off, and it certainly is a mission. So it cuts through the backing, and that is actually on the lightest cut pressure setting on Cricut, and it still actually goes through the backing, and I think that's really what causes the problem. But anyway, we can now apply this to our clear sheet. And there we have our windows. So I'll dice these out and then I'll set them aside ready for later on. So I've got the main four walls here now, and it's a case of applying the brick prints to each of the wall sections. Now some of them have some brick that wraps around the edges and some doesn't need it. So the ones that have these little wee crop marks at top and bottom, that's where the brickwork is actually going to be wrapped around. So if we sort of take a close look, you might just see down there, there's some little wee crop marks that indicate where the brick wraps. So I think we'll start with the easiest one first, of course, which is this one here. So that is the kind of corner wall where the main shop door is, and we can also do the rear wall as well, which faces towards the industrial building, and that's that one there. So these ones here, of course, we can just simply trim right to the edge. We'll set this aside to dry. Now I do actually wait for these to really fully dry out, because of course we've got some glue stick actually on these cavities in here where windows and doors are, and I prefer to wait until that is actually fully dry in there before I actually start cutting out where the windows and doors go and wrapping the brickwork around. So these need to be set aside and let to dry for a reasonable amount of time. So I've now applied the brickwork to the return wall on here, and I've just left that edge so that can be wrapped later on once the face of this is fully dry. So the last one is this wall here, and this one is going to wrap at both edges. So this edge will actually be wrapped once the other return wall is installed. So this one here is a little bit different. I haven't actually gone and chopped off the top and the bottom because I actually need to know the registration for the alignment to this wall, because essentially the wall is going to sit in where those crop marks are. Right, so that's the walls done, and as you can see we've got this overlap, so this overlap will actually come around the corner once this wall's actually in place. So that wall's going to be fixed to there, and then I can actually wrap that brickwork on this end. Of course the brickwork is actually just going to wrap fully around the ends. So now it's a case of waiting for this stuff to dry, because when it comes to the wrapping of this brickwork I switched glues and moved to the rocket card glue. It's just much easier to control, and then when you're wrapping it, it sets pretty much straight away, so you're not having to worry about it popping back up or anything. So I've now given these an opportunity to dry, and that glue stick has pretty much dried on these overlapped pieces. So now it's a case of wrapping the parts that need to be wrapped and wrapping through these windows. So I'll just sort of briefly do one set, and then I'll speed through and complete all the other ones. So as I mentioned, I use the rocket card glue for this process, and a toothpick to apply the glue. And I also spotted on a video, or it might have been on Facebook, where people use an upside down jar to pour a little bit of rocket glue out on, and apparently it doesn't dry as quickly. So I'm going to give this a go and see whether that actually works. Now we've got a bit of a bow, of course, when the glue is dried, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue, and I'll just sort of curve it back out a bit. But once we actually start constructing the building itself, it should all sort of square up, hopefully. So we'll start with this edge here, and just to encourage it along a little bit, I'll actually put it face down and then bend this brick tab up so that we start to get the edge of it folding around the corner, and sort of go a little bit further and wrap it sort of right around, just to encourage the creasing of it, and then we'll just peel it back out a little bit and apply some glue. So we're just going to put our rocket glue in the top of this jar, and it'll be interesting to see if this remains quite liquidy. And we're just going to run the glue along the edge here. The good thing with the rocket glue, of course, is it dries very fast, and so we can get it to stick in and stay there pretty much almost immediately. So once again, putting it face down, and then we'll just hinge it up on the edge of the paper, and then we can actually just sort of push this over on the inside edge. Now this is where the spraying of the brick paper beforehand really helps, because it does protect the print and stops it from scratching and so forth. So we've now got that wrapped around that edge, and if you sort of take a close look at that, we get a nice tidy brick edge that wraps around. So the next step is, with a nice fine scalpel, is cutting out these window sections. So I'm just running a knife on the inside edge, and we'll cut some of the excess off this. Now, as opposed to the St Michael's station, of course I had to do all of this once it was constructed, and so it is easier if you do the brick application and the wrapping before you actually assemble all the walls together, because you've got far greater control over wrapping the paper around the edges. So I just actually use the other end of my tweezers and push it in so that you get quite a crisp edge to the fold around the edge of the card. So next is the windows, and the windows is just a case of running a blade roughly down the middle on the inside, and just turn it the other way to get that bottom. And then cutting across the bottom and the top. And turning it around, doing the other edge. And then we should be able to just poke these in a little bit. And we start to see them poking through to the other side. And I usually find, actually, when you've got a whole series of windows like this, it's really sort of easier to just work one window at a time, because by the time you've applied the glue to one of these, and if you did the whole lot, by the time you got back to the first one you did, the glue is already dried. And we'll do this other window on this side. And that's essentially the effect that you get from, of course, wrapping the brickwork and using the handle of the tweezers. It sort of gives it a bit more of a crisp edge to it. And then we've got the tabs wrapping around the back. So I'll go ahead and do all the wrapping that needs to be done at this point and come back to you when I've got that all complete. So I've now got all the brick paper now nicely wrapped around all the various edges, and now the next component to add to these before we start assembling the building is some of the windows that we'd prepared earlier. So we can dig these out, and not all the windows are going to be installed at this point. I believe that according to the Scalescenes assembly instructions, these windows here, they're actually installed kind of sandwiched in between some extra layers for the shop front, so we're just going to leave those out because I'm not going to put them in behind here, because I think by the time I've done that they're going to be too deep and too recessed, so we'll leave those for later on. Now we've got a door here which is going to tuck in here, and I think I can probably install that door, and then we've got sets of windows, so we've got doubles and singles. Better make sure I have them up the right way. So that's what we're sort of looking at for the windows, and actually I'm really quite liking that beige window frame. It actually ties in nicely. So for the windows being attached, I use the glue and glaze, although you could probably just use the card glue, but just in case I end up inadvertently spreading glue, this of course dries crystal clear. So we'll start with this section of wall and just show you how I go about doing this, and then of course I'll carry on and finish them all off. Now I'm just going to stick a blob here. The window glue stuff, this glue and glaze, is a little bit more thicker in consistency, so I'm going to glue that in there. So we're just putting a wee dab around the edges, and it doesn't need to be much at all. It's quite a minimal amount of glue that's needed. So I'm only gluing on the actual brick parts here because of course that's now slightly raised. It's probably a little point putting glue at the top and bottom because there's really no sort of contact because the window's now sort of set off from the back of the wall, but you can start to sort of see how it's going to look. So that's how the windows are starting to shape up. So I'll carry on and do the remaining windows and come back when I've got all of those installed. So I've now got all the glazing fitted that I can fit at this stage, and it's coming out pretty well in terms of the appearance. So we'll leave it there for part one, and we'll get into the actual assembly of the building in part two, and then also get into some of the finer details as well. So back at the beginning of the video I mentioned the possibility of using Inkscape as a solution for manipulating these kits on the computer. So I quickly went and downloaded a copy of Inkscape and had a look to see if it actually would manage to manipulate these kits. So I've had a quick look at Inkscape just to see if you can actually manipulate the downloadable PDFs from Scalescenes, and it seems that you can. So it's a case of going to File, Open, and selecting the PDF. So I'll choose this PDF here from Scalescenes, and then we've got a couple of settings here. Now what seems to work best is firstly select the page that you want to manipulate, so deselect all, and then we'll say go through to page 10. So that's the page that I was using in Illustrator, and it seems to work better on this Poplar Cairo import. the internal import for some reason brings through the vector graphics, but it seems to skip the actual brickwork and textures and things like that. But this Poplar Cairo import seems to work okay. And then it's just a case of clicking OK, and it opens it up. Now, once it's open in here, for example, you can just simply manipulate these pieces. So these are all separate pieces. We've got our bricks in here, and then of course you can, for example, I'm not sure what I can do here, and maybe if we go duplicate, and there you go. So I can now make more brickwork, for example, and that's essentially what I was doing in Illustrator. So you can also work this in Inkscape, which of course is the free alternative. So probably some of the similar aspects, for example, the brickwork is a bitmap inside the vector based file, so it's got a unique sort of shape to it if we zoom in closer on it, and this is where it wraps around edges and things like that. But if you wanted to get rid of all of that, just to use the brickwork itself, then you can go down to what's called release clip, and that actually removes a clipping mask that's on the brickwork. And I'll just see whether it needs another ungroup. Release clip again, and you might find you have to do it several times, but there's the clipping mask which got these funny corners on it, and now that is just the base brick layer that of course you could duplicate over and over and overlap it and print it out to whatever you want. So yeah, that's just a quick sort of look at Inkscape, and it very much seems that you can manipulate these Scalescenes files quite nicely within this program. So we'll leave it there for today's video. It's certainly been great getting back into a bit of modeling, and I certainly hope today has given you some ideas and inspiration into working with these Scalescenes kits and how far you can actually push and take them to different levels. So keep your eyes peeled for part 2. Do look after yourselves. Take care. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.